It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by CG Technology Sportsbook.
Money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Presented by WagerTalk.com.
It is our CG Thursday edition of the Las Vegas Sportsline. Will Bernanke, the Moneyline guy, will be along with us in a little bit to take us behind the counter on all of today's action. There isn't much action today, so we'll also include some of tomorrow's and Saturday's where the numbers are up and we can get a gauge on where the money's showing up. Ralph Michaels is here. I'm Dave Cokin. Harry Platinum's producing the show. And we've got plenty to discuss, despite the fact that it's a small slate tonight. We'll start off by looking back at last night as the Blazers, Ralph, they go wire to wire at Denver, even up the series, one game apiece. This is one time the zigzag did work out.
It did, and they sure looked good doing it. I mean, it was a combination of them looking good and Denver just letting down a little bit.
Couldn't make a shot.
Denver's a young playoff team, so for them to get to the second round, there's a different level of pressure on you in that situation. Yeah,
and Portland looked for all the world like the team that played so well against Oklahoma City in the first round, and they were the dominant team in that series. Did you see anything to indicate that Portland is clearly the right side in this series now, or do you expect Denver to get back the home court advantage by maybe splitting the two at Portland?
Well, Denver's record this year was predicated on having the strongest home court or the second best record I think they finished with. So for them to give up one of those games, they had the poorest record of all the playoff teams in the West on the road, and I think Portland certainly held serve by stealing one of those games. I think advantage Trailblazers now.
Well, the Carolina Hurricanes stole two games, if you want to call them stole. They went in and won them in Brooklyn against the Islanders. And maybe the Islanders' home ice advantage wasn't as strong in Brooklyn as it was at Nassau County Coliseum. That's open for debate. But in any effect, Carolina took those two games and then made it stand up last night. They extend the series lead to 3-0. Final score was misleading. It was 5-2. They got a couple of empty net goals late to extend the margin. I mean, the Islanders threw everything but the kitchen sink at them in the first period and could not get ahead. In fact, never led in this hockey game. They trailed 1-0. They trailed 2-1. They came back both times to tie it, but the Islanders fell behind 3-2 in the third, and that was the end of that. They could not get the tying goal, and only 4 teams have come back from a 3-0 deficit to win in NHL history. It doesn't happen very often, so the Islanders are in real trouble now as they approach Game 4. And look, that Carolina home ice advantage right now is as good as it gets.
And of those 4 times, it happened with 212 occurrences. So out of 212 times, only 4 times have they come back. I don't think they're coming back. I mean, it's a situation where you talked about the Islanders moving away into the new new arena.
Yeah, I thought it was maybe worth a nickel on the line. Not a huge adjustment, but I thought it's just not the same atmosphere as they have on the island.
Are you surprised with all the series in this NHL playoffs that has gone 3-0 so far?
I didn't expect them to win twice, especially given Barry Trotz's amazing resume going back to last year with the Capitals. And the Islanders looked so good in their opening round. It's kind of hard to believe they just have gone backwards here. And it's not that they've looked bad in this series. Carolina's just been that good.
Much better.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's
clearly the better
hockey.
team on the ice. I expect them to finish.
So do I, although I haven't decided whether I'm going to play the game tomorrow night or not. We'll talk more about that later with Will Bernanke. The Dallas Stars, meanwhile, have evened things up with St. Louis Blues. They get the 4-2 victory. A lot of over-bettors were praying at the end, come on, empty net goal, but they didn't get one. The St. Louis Blues, they were outplayed last night. I mean, Dallas, this was one game where the right side clearly was Dallas in terms of the way the game flowed, and they got the victory. Sometimes it doesn't play out that way if you run into a hot goalie on a particular night. I think the Vegas Golden Knights know something about that. Game 6 against the Sharks rings a bell. But last night, Dallas was just the better team. They got it done. Bittinger looked a little bit off last night, and I think the Blues just put it behind them. And this is now a best-of-3 series with 2 of the 3 games taking place if they go to a Game 7 in St. Louis.
You know, the Dallas first-year head coach changed up his line. He moved a couple guys around, and it worked. So, you know, you have some certain playoff times where you have a first-year head coach and he's making moves and he's not afraid to make him in the playoffs down 2-1. It worked for him, so good for him.
Did it in the prior series as well. Yeah. So Montgomery's been, I like to use the term proactive and reactive. He's been proactive. He's been making moves before something happens that gets his team in trouble. I think it's one of the biggest things I look at in terms of rating managers in baseball.
Versus being down 3-1. He did it down 2-1 and got him back to even.
Right. So good move. All right, so that's enough of last night's stuff. Let's take a look at we've only got 4 games to talk about, actually. We've got 2 hockey games. We've got a basketball game and a baseball. Actually, we have 5 games to talk about. We have 2 basketball games. One of those, the Raptors 76ers, we will save for the marquee matchup. There's 2 hockey games and 2 baseball games, I guess. Do I have that right? Yeah. We'll look at those games now. 4 at 4 time.
1, 2, 3 into the 4.
Put them 4s up. Put the 4s up, I said. Do it right now.
Tonight's action is just around the bend, and the guys want to get your night off to a great start.
4.
It's the Las Vegas Sportsline's 4 at 4.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Unbelievable.
All right, we get it. Excuse me. Be better if I talk into the mic, huh? Let's get it started on the ice where the Bruins and Blue Jackets play Game 4, and this is obviously a critical game for the Bruins, down 2-1 to the high-flying Blue Jackets. Boy, the Bruins really hurt themselves in Game 3 with bad penalties, the worst of them being the Brad Marchand penalty, where he just lost his mind and took a punch at a guy, and that power play resulted in the game-winning goal for Columbus. That stuff always worries me because I wonder about the impact it has in the locker room. I know Marchand this is not atypical for him. He is a guy who is not very disciplined on the ice and takes bad penalties at times. He's also one of the real spark plugs in the NHL. But he hurt the team last game, and now the Bruins, in a sense, have their backs against the wall because if they lose this game, they're in real trouble. Columbus, hard to find fault with anything they're doing right now. Bobrovsky is on fire. In goal, Seth Jones is playing great. They're getting production from different lines. They look like a really good hockey team right now. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I lean Bruins, but it's not enough for me to make a play on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're the Blue Jackets and you've gone 13-2 your last 15 games, and that includes Tampa Bay and Boston, they've scored power play goals 6 of their last 7 games. They've had the power plays 8 out of 21 opportunities. And, perhaps the Bruins penalty, we talk about making a mistake and costing you 2 games, the game you're on and the next game, because the mentality changes. Were you surprised there was no suspension?
No.
Or you figured
No, they're not. They don't
because
suspend for
because
that.
of the night situation, or was it going to happen
that's
anyway?
Not a
just playoff hockey.
It's not a
Okay.
suspendable
All right.
offense. It's
Someone
just-
had brought it up.
it's
I
just-
don't follow it enough to know that.
No, not even close. It's just a penalty. That's all it is. No. If they start suspending for stuff like that, they may as well just close the game. That's the end of the game. We'll see. I mean, it's a heck of a game. If you're going to watch something tonight, I would suggest that. I think it's going to be intense and should be very exciting. The other game, the Sharks and Avalanche, Colorado, won Game 2 and momentarily seized home ice advantage, but they gave it back as the opportunistic Sharks pulled out the win in Game 3. I thought San Jose was the better team early, but Colorado had come back, tie game, and then the Avalanche had a very bad turnover in their own end. Logan Couture seized on it, put the puck in the net, and that was the end of the game. So now Colorado in a spot here where they've got to get this game. They don't want to be down 3-1. Doesn't mean they're out of the series if they lose, but it makes things difficult. San Jose, I used the word opportunistic, and that is what the Sharks are all about right now. You go back to the last 2 games of the Golden Knights series, Ralph. They win Game 6 in double overtime in a game in which they allowed 59 shots on goal. They win a game that they had no business winning in Game 7 when they take advantage of a bad penalty call. And to say they took advantage of it is an understatement because they scored 4 power play goals on 1 5-minute major penalty to end that series. And now they take advantage of a mistake by Colorado in Game 3 to turn the momentum and maybe the momentum in the series as well. I don't know if I can go against the Sharks right now. If there's a, and I hate this expression because I don't think there's any such thing, but I'll use it anyway. San Jose kind of looks like the team of destiny right now, don't they?
Well, if you remember back, I mean, people were talking about this goaltender for the Sharks shouldn't even be in goal.
Well, yeah.
He should get benched. I mean, we won 3 straight, 5-2, 5-3, and then a couple goal win it all. And I mean, credit to him. I mean, what a performance to turn that around, finish the series the way he did, play the way he's done. One thing I did when I looked up when I looked up Denver's record, off a home loss this year, they're only 5-5 as a home favorite after home loss. I was expecting a much better number for that. So I do expect them to bounce back here. It's nothing that I feel strong enough to play on, but I do think back in the home ice, they have enough done to get it done tonight.
From a situational standpoint, you would think the Red Sox rate as big favorites tonight against the White Sox, and they do. It's about $2. White Sox having to play 2 games yesterday because of a rainout, and the Red Sox had an early game that they won comfortably and hit the road playing, I guess you could say, their best baseball of the season. I mean, it's hard for them not to be playing their best baseball of the season, considering how badly the first few weeks of the season went. But they do look a little more like the 2018 Red Sox in the last few games. Good series over the weekend against Oakland. They continued it during the week, and they'll go in with David Price on the mound tonight against Lucas Giolito in Chicago.
Yeah, well, David Price, at least he's righted the ship.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at his last 3 starts, 4 runs in 18 innings. He's pitched great, but I still don't want to lay 2-1 with this Boston team. I mean, you look at the 3-game sweep, and yeah, that was against Oakland, and yes, their bats have done very well the last 7 days, a slugging percentage of .443.
It's as simple as that. Mookie Betts.
The offense goes as Mookie Betts does at
absolutely.
the top. Yep. But, on the flip side, what do you have? Giolito with a 5.46 lifetime ERA. If I had to play anything, if I was forced to make a play, I hate to do it, but I would say I would take Boston on the run line minus the 1.5, minus 130, just because I don't want the White Sox and I want no part of a 2-1 favorite.
And on the West Coast, the Angels will host the Blue Jays tonight. The Angels looking to get a series sweep, getting some good pitching. The Blue Jays, I think they had a bit of a letdown coming out of a weekend in Toronto where the place was packed for the debut of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, they played well. They got a sweep against the Oakland A's. I mean, it was a really good weekend for Toronto. Tremendous excitement up there, and it looks like they've lost a little bit of their edge going on the West Coast, but knocked down again by the Angels last night. And they're up against a tough lefty tonight in Tyler Skaggs.
Feast or famine for Toronto of late. They swept Oakland, got swept by San Francisco, swept Oakland again, and now they're down 0-2 looking for the sweep. Just a stat for those people, teams looking for a 3-game sweep like the Angels, when they're a favorite of 140 or more, are actually profitable, 194 and 96 since 2014. A totals note, you have Scott Berry behind home plate. He's 4-0 over this year, 10 runs per game. He's 10-3 over his last 13 games. And
maybe he has a smaller strike zone than some. Aaron Sanchez on the mound for Toronto can lose the strike zone at times, so might that factor in as well. Will Bernanke joining us today. It's time for the CG Sportsbooks Thursday Behind the Counter Report. Lots to talk about with Will. How are you, big guy? What's going on?
Oh, great, Dave. We're just working on the final couple weeks of weeks 2 through 16 in the NFL, so those should be up pretty soon. There
we go. We'll talk a little more about that later in this portion of the show. Let's start off by talking about the betting recap of last night's Blazers-Nuggets game. Yep. I couldn't figure out which side the money was on. Was there a side, or was this kind of a 50-50 game?
It was 50-50 for a while, and then until about 20 minutes before tip, there was some Nuggets money coming, especially on the money line. So we did well with Portland winning outright, and the game staying way under. I mean, if I would have told you neither team would score 100 points, I would just think that's not happening on any. If you play that game 100 times, that wouldn't happen.
All right, time to go behind the counter, and we'll start off with tonight's Raptors 76ers matchup, and we'll talk more about this one, Ralph and myself, when we get to the Marquee matchup later on. But look, I don't think anybody thinks either of these two teams is going to win the NBA championship, but it's a really good series, and I think there's good reason to believe there's going to be plenty of volume on this game.
Yeah, it's surprisingly good volume right now. Tickets, though, are fairly even, but right now 80% of the cash is on the Raptors, and we've took a respected bet this morning on Toronto -1, so it looks like the line's still heading that way, towards Toronto.
Moving to Saturday's NBA action, Friday night, the Bucks and the Celtics. Obviously, Boston steals Game 1, and the Bucks looked like they rebounded very strongly Game 2. Now heading back to Boston, what's the early action doing in this game?
Yeah, not a lot of action thus far, but just a hint. Looks like the bettors might be on the Celtics. Ticket count's about 4-1 with low volume on the Celtics right now. Money's about even, so that's